Hello party people, it is Will Pemble. This behind me is the wood frame for the lift hill and maybe most of the track for the lift hill. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to put those things together now and see if I can get that done. So we're going to get started on it and see how far I can get before the sun goes down. Okay, so as you can see here, this piece of track that I built that I imagined as the lift hill, it doesn't quite work. Let me give you a little bit closer look of what I mean. The thing has kind of a 45-degree angle between that top piece there and the ramp down, but there's a fair bit of a bow that comes out, and when I match it to my 45-degree lift hill, what I end up with is kind of a 55 or a 50-degree angle going up, and that's not going to work exactly in terms of the calculations I've made for the amount of chain I have, the strength of my motor, the RPM, the number of minutes or seconds it'll take to get to the top of the hill. And so I think I got a little too ambitious trying to make this all as one fluid thing. I'm maybe not as good as I thought I was. So a little bit back to the drawing board, but we're definitely getting there. Okay, the next step here to get all of this to go is we're going to bend some pipe. So I'm going to drag a couple of big long 20-foot pieces of pipe out into the driveway and do some bending, and I'm going to come up with two pieces that just kind of look like that. And my hope is that I end up with like 2 feet of straight pipe at the bottom of the hill and 2 feet up at the top, and then the hill in the middle. And that way I can hook the rest of it to the system as we have discussed. So I'm going to get started on that right now. Here's my little hydraulic pipe bender, and I will now show you how it works. The whole thing is really pretty simple. What we've got here is we've got a hydraulic jack or a hydraulic piston, and whenever you pump it, it goes up, and then what you can do to release the pressure is turn this thing backwards, and then when you turn this thing backwards, you can push the piston down, and then what happens is the pipe goes in through here, thusly, right? So if you were the pipe, you would go right through here, right? And then what happens is as you pump the jack up, this piece pushes up against these two rollers here, and you get a bend in the pipe. And so you can make nice bends in pipe pretty easily, pretty accurately. What I've learned here about this particular jack, which is really important and helpful, is that if you look down here, what I've discovered is that one pump of this handle here, one pump equals 1 degree of bend in the pipe. So if I wanted to make a 45-degree bend, I would simply pump this 45 times. However, the problem with that is that if I make a 45-degree bend in this same area of pipe, what I'm going to end up with is I'm going to end up with something that's really too sharp of a turn to use. So what I need for my 45-degree turn to happen over a fair distance of pipe. I need my 45-degree bend to happen over like 3 or 4 feet of pipe. So what I do is I say, okay, I need 45 degrees. What if I were to break it into 9 different bends? And that would be 9 times 5 is 45. And so if I did 5 pumps, that would be 5 degrees of bend per bend over 5 different bends. And if I wanted to break those up, say by, let's keep with 5s, every 5 inches. So what if I did 5 degrees of bend over 5 inches? That would be 5 times 9 would be 45 degrees of bend, and 5 times 9 inches, every 5 inches we do a bend. That would be over 45 inches of track. And so over almost 4 feet of track, we'd get our 45-degree bend. Now what would be cool about that is that it would be a shallow enough bend to allow us to still have the coaster cart stay on the track successfully, right? Because if it's too sharp of a bend, it's not going to work. So that's how we're going to do that, and it'll all come clear to you in just a minute as I show you in my incredibly super fast pipe bending technique. So here I've just marked off some pieces of the pipe here. First, what I did was I drew a straight line down the center of the pipe, and on the other side of the pipe I drew a straight line down the other side, because this part is going to bend one way and that part's going to bend the other way. And then what I'm going to do is I decided to go every 4 inches because I'm thinking space is a consideration, but every 4 inches I drew a little cross mark along the pipe. And every time I find one of these, I'm going to make a 5-degree bend in the pipe. And so what's going to happen is this is going to be a 5 degree. So there's going to be 5 degrees, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and yes, 50 degrees is going to be the whole number of bends that I run along this pipe, because I want the thing to slope down a little bit when it goes into the lift hill, but then it's going to be a fairly steep thing. It's going to go kind of straight into this climb, and then at the other end of the hill it's going to be a little bit shallower. I think I'll go, instead of every 4 inches putting a bend, I think I'll put a bend every 5 inches, so it'll be a little bit more gentle at the top of the hill, so that the cart can easily clear the hill. If you look at some of the other videos, that's when you have camel humps, clearance of the center part of the cart is one of the things we want to keep in mind. So I'm going to try to manage that as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this piece of pipe. Okay, so I've got my 5-degree bends every 4 inches in 9 spots on this pipe, and then what I want to do is I'm going to take my little gauge here, and let's see what we end up with. If I match this up to the pipe here, forgive me, 10 spots, and what I end up with is that's pointing straight up, and that shows me that it's about 50 degrees. And so with my 50-degree bend, that means when it starts to go, this is the level part, when it starts to go into the lift hill, the cart will actually roll a little bit downhill into the lift hill, which will give it a little boost where it can catch onto the chain lift and head up the rest of the hill. And so I'm happy with this bend. I'm going to go to the other end of the turn, and I'm going to make the part that levels out. And again, that's going to be a little bit shallower than this, because that's a pretty steep hump going over the top. But this looks awesome. Okay, here is what I have now. My first pipe, I've got a 50-degree, nice wide, beautiful arc bend up at the top of the lift hill, and then it goes down, and I've got another beautiful 50-degree bend arc down at the bottom of the lift hill. Let's see if I can do this with 2 hands. First, I will remove the safety clamp, which is kind of like removing the safety, and what I'll try to do is position this thing a little bit more like it would go if we had it in regular. And so that's what the arc of the thing is going to look like. Okay, back here in the garage, what I've done is I've bent the second rail, as you can see, and they pretty much match up the way we would want them to, and I've clamped them together and I've moved them into the garage. Now, the really cool thing about them being in the garage is that I can do all the welding right here in the garage on the mostly level garage floor, out of the rain. It's still a little bit rainy, you know, wintertime in California. It's not perfect always when you live in California, just most of the time. So what's going to happen tomorrow, which will also be Christmas Day, by the way, for fun, and my Christmas present, my surprise Christmas present to my mom, who we met in a video, the last video that I did, I'm going to teach my mom how to weld. And so my mom is going to help me put together the lift hill for this. And her name is Lois, and she is awesome. Don't tell her if you watch this video, because tomorrow it's going to be a surprise. So anyway, I'm going to teach her how to weld, and we're going to have a great time and put this thing together tomorrow. But for now, it's Christmas Eve. I've got to go put some cookies and milk and carrots and stuff out for Santa and the reindeer. We are so excited. I cannot wait to see what comes for Christmas. And Merry Christmas to everybody, and I will see you soon.